My name is John, and my Airbnb host left one rule that didn't sound like a house rule at all. If someone knocks after 2 a.m., I should write their name in the guest book instead of opening the door. 2 hours outside town, the road turned to gravel, and the trees got taller. By the time I pulled up, the cabin looked like a postcard. Warm porch light on, nothing else around it but dark woods. Inside, it smelled like pine cleaner and old coffee. On the kitchen counter, there was a laminated house manual and an actual guest book. The rule was printed on the last page of the manual. Same wording as the message. Same time, 2 a.m. Don't open the door. Write the name in the book instead. I told myself it was just one of those weird host quirks, the kind people write long, angry reviews about when they're bored. I unpacked, ate something I'd grabbed on the way in, and tried not to look at the guest book again. For a while, it worked. I put a show on my phone, scrolled, let the cabin noise blend into the background. Then I realized I wasn't really watching anything. I was just listening to the heater click on and off, counting in my head without meaning to. Around 1:50, I stopped pretending. I locked my screen and just stared at the green numbers on the stove. At 1:58, I noticed the time and felt my stomach tighten. At 2:01, I heard the first knock. Not a pounding, not frantic, just 3 slow taps on the door, like someone testing whether the wood was still solid. I didn't move. The heater clicked once and stayed quiet, like even it was listening. The knocking stopped, and somehow the silence felt heavier than the sound, like whoever was outside had decided to wait me out. I stood up, walked to the door as quietly as I could, and turned off the lamp. The cabin went dark, except for a thin strip of porch light at the bottom of the door. For a few seconds, nothing moved. Just my heartbeat and the faint ticking from the heater. Then something slid into view along that strip of light, pressed right up against the seam under the door. Not all the way through, just close enough that I could see the shape of it. It looked like a hand that had been put back together wrong. Too many bends in the fingers, knuckles in the wrong places, nails dragging lightly against the wood instead of tapping. It tapped the floor once, twice, 3 times, the exact same rhythm as the knocking from before. Then a voice came through the wood, close and level, and said my name. Not hello, not hey, just my name, like it had been practicing it. I backed away, step by step, until I could reach the kitchen counter. I opened the guest book with shaking hands. On the next empty line, my name was already written there in dark, uneven ink I didn't recognize. By the time the windows started to go gray, I wasn't thinking about the clock or the house rules anymore. I just kept seeing that wrong hand under the door and hearing my name in that voice. I hadn't slept at all. I sat on the couch with every light on, staring at the bottom of the door and waiting for that shape to slide back into view. When daylight finally came, nothing moved. No hand under the door, no sound, just trees pressed up against the fogged glass. I walked to the door slowly and cracked it open, half expecting to see someone standing right on the other side. There was no one there. The air was cold and still. The gravel driveway looked undisturbed, the tree line too quiet, like the whole place had been holding its breath all night. I closed the door again, long enough to grab my things. I went to the kitchen counter, took my car keys, and set the cabin key down next to the guest book. For a second, I tried not to look at the page, but my eyes went straight to my name. It was on the next empty line, exactly where I'd seen it the night before, and under it, there was one more word that hadn't been there. It didn't look written. It looked pressed into the paper, like something had leaned on the page from underneath. Return. As I drove away from the cabin, I kept telling myself it was over, that once the trees thinned out and my phone got signal again, this would go back to being just a bad story in my head. For a while, it almost worked. The road opened up, other cars appeared, and the cabin dropped out of my mirrors. Then my phone buzzed. One notification from the app, one new message from the host, one new review waiting. The message was short. Hope you slept well. There was nothing else. No question, no smiley, just that line, like they were checking which version of the night I was going to admit to. When I opened the review, it started with my name. Except it wasn't my name anymore. Not exactly. One letter was wrong. Just enough to make it look like it belonged to someone else. The review said I had followed all of the house rules perfectly, and that they'd be happy to have me back anytime. But seeing that almost right name after everything in that cabin made it feel less like an invitation and more like a promise I'd already agreed to. My name is Aaron, and I booked a lakeside cabin Airbnb to clear my head for a weekend. But the host left one rule that sounded less like advice and more like a warning for people who didn't leave that place the way they arrived. The cabin sat by itself at the edge of a black, still lake. No neighbors, no other driveways. Just one narrow road in and out, swallowed by trees. Inside, it was warmer than I expected. There was a stone fireplace, a small table, and a single notebook laid out with a pen on top of it. The host had printed the house rules and taped them to the fridge. Most of them were normal. No smoking, no candles, no parties. The last rule was in bold, with a line of yellow highlighter underneath it. If you hear anyone outside calling your name after midnight, do not answer or look out the windows. Sit down at the table and write down exactly what you hear in the notebook. Do not stop writing until the voice is gone. I told myself the rule was just there to scare guests into taking the place seriously, until the first night when someone outside the cabin started using my name like we'd already met. That night, the lake was so still it looked solid. No wind, just my reflection in the glass when I turned the lights off to go to bed. I checked the time on my phone. 11:47. Too early for after midnight. Too early for any of this to matter. I lay there listening to the fridge hum and the occasional creak from the cabin settling, until all of that seemed to pull back at once, like the room was holding its breath. Then I heard it through the wall. Aaron. Not loud, not a shout, just a voice, low and close, like someone standing a few feet from the window. I froze and stared at the ceiling, waiting to hear footsteps in the gravel or on the porch. There was nothing, just the voice again. Aaron, come outside for a second. Every instinct I had told me to look out the window, to check the driveway, the lake, the trees. After a few minutes, I realized the notebook wasn't just for recording the voice. It was starting to change the way the voice talked to me. At first, I only wrote the exact words I heard. Aaron, come outside, just for a minute. My hand was shaking, but the longer I wrote, the easier the pen moved, like the page had been waiting for this and knew the rhythm already. Then the voice shifted. Aaron, you're doing a good job. Keep writing. I didn't want to put that down. It sounded wrong, too familiar, like something a friend would say over my shoulder. I thought I was only copying what the voice said until I tried to stop writing and realized my hand wasn't listening to me anymore. The voice outside went quiet for a moment, like it was waiting to see what I would do with the last thing it told me. Look at the water, Aaron. Tell me what you see. I didn't look at the window. I kept my eyes on the page and wrote those words down, letter by letter. Then, before I could lift the pen, my hand kept moving. The lake is dark, and something under the surface is pushing the water in slow circles. I felt my throat tighten. The curtains were closed. I hadn't seen the lake since sunset, but the description was already there in my handwriting. "I don't want this," I whispered, but the pen didn't care. It dragged across the paper again. "There's a shape standing in the water, too tall for that depth, its head just under the surface." I tried to pull my hand back. My fingers wouldn't let go of the pen. Outside, the voice caught up to the words on the page. "That's right. Keep going." My whole body wanted to get up, to run, to scream, but all that actually moved were the muscles in my hand. Ink scratched into the paper one more time, like it was answering a question I never meant to say yes to. "It can see me at the table." At some point, the voice finally told me I could stop, and the worst part was realizing I'd been waiting for its permission instead of my own. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember jerking awake at the table with my neck hurting and my hand still wrapped around the pen. The cabin was gray with early light. The voice was gone. For the first time all night, the silence really sounded like silence. My fingers were cramped so tight I had to peel them off the pen one by one. For a second, I thought about taking the notebook with me, just to prove the rule didn't own me. When I opened the cover, there was a line printed in small letters on the inside: "Property of the cabin, do not remove." I swallowed and flipped to the page I'd filled. My writing crawled down almost to the bottom, fragments of the night, the things I was forced to hear and put into words. The last line I remembered was, "It can see me at the table." Right under it, in the same ink, there was another sentence I didn't remember writing. "When the next guest arrives, you will help me talk to them." Beneath that, my name was written again. The letters were shaped like mine, but too neat, like something had practiced until it got them right. I shut the notebook and left it on the table, put the cabin key beside it, and walked out without looking at the lake. I reached the car, opened the door, and finally let myself breathe. That was when the wind shifted off the water. From the direction of the cabin, clear and steady, I heard my own voice call out, "Aaron, come inside for a minute." It wasn't in my head. It wasn't an echo. It was my voice, still standing in that cabin, waiting for someone else to answer. My name is Daniel, and I booked a mountain cabin Airbnb to get some quiet snow and a clean weekend alone. But the host left one rule about the front window that sounded like something someone would tell a kid about monsters, not an adult renting a winter getaway. The cabin sat halfway up a hill, the only light on the slope, with a huge living room window facing the dark tree line. By the time I got there, snow had already started to fall in slow, heavy flakes. No other cars on the road, no other cabins with lights on, just mine. Inside, it was too quiet. No TV, no neighbors through thin walls, just the soft hum of the heater and the sound of the wind pushing against the glass. On the coffee table, there was a laminated sheet with "House Rules" at the top, and a Wi-Fi password scribbled in blue pen at the bottom. Most of it was normal. No shoes on the rug, no moving the furniture, no open flames. The last rule took up its own section in bold. After 1 a.m., do not stand in front of the large living room window with the lights on. If you see your reflection in the window move differently than you, do not wave, do not speak, and do not turn your back on the glass. Step back slowly until you reach the couch without looking away from the window. Sit down facing the window, close your eyes, and count to 200 out loud. If you hear it touch the glass before you finish counting, do not open the front door for any reason. On the first night, I told myself the window rule was just the host's way of giving the place a spooky story, until I realized how easy it would be to break it without meaning to. I made dinner, put on some music from my phone, and tried to treat the cabin like any other weekend rental. By midnight, the snow outside had turned the window into a dark mirror with a white frame. I could see the whole living room behind me, the couch, the lamp, and my own reflection in the glass. It looked normal. Same tired face, same sweatshirt, same way of standing with my shoulders a little too tense. I checked the time. 12:14. I stepped closer to the window, just to see how exaggerated the rule felt. With the lights on and the trees hidden behind my reflection, it was easy to imagine someone standing out there looking in. I raised a hand slowly and watched my reflection do the same. No lag, no wrong angle, no strange smile. I caught myself holding my breath anyway. By 12:40, I'd convinced myself the rule was there for the kind of guest who drank too much and scared themselves on their own shadow. I turned the lights off before 1 a.m., just to make sure I wasn't one of them. I would have slept fine if I hadn't woken up and seen the digital clock on the stove glowing 1:13 a.m. and the living room full of light again. I was sure I'd turned everything off before going to bed, but the cabin was bright, the lamp in the corner burning, the hallway light on, and a pale wash of reflection spilling across the bedroom door from the living room window. For a minute, I just lay there and listened. The heater hummed. The wind pushed against the walls. Nothing else. I told myself I'd left the light on without noticing, that the clock was a coincidence, that I didn't have to look. Then I got up anyway. The living room felt different with the lights on after 1 a.m., like the window took up more of the wall than it had before. Outside, the hill and the trees were just a layered darkness. In the glass, my reflection stood exactly where I was standing. I lifted my hand. The reflection lifted its hand with me. I shifted my weight to one side. The reflection followed a fraction of a second too late. It was small, barely half a heartbeat, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I remembered the rule. Do not wave. Do not speak. Do not turn your back on the glass. I kept my eyes on my own face in the window and stepped back slowly until the backs of my legs met the couch. I sat down, still facing the window, and closed my eyes. My voice came out hoarse and too loud in the quiet room. 1, 2, 3. By the time I reached 30, I realized counting wasn't calming me down. It was just measuring how long it would take for something I couldn't see to reach the window. I kept my eyes shut, like the rule said. My voice sounded wrong in the quiet room, like it belonged to someone standing closer to the glass than I was. 31, 32, 33. The heater shut off with a soft click. The wind outside dropped away. Between numbers, the cabin felt hollow. Somewhere behind my eyelids, the window took up the whole space in my mind, black and tall, with my reflection standing in it, half a step behind. 40, 41. That was when I heard it. A faint scrape, high and slow, like fingertips dragging lightly down cold glass. I swallowed and kept counting. 42, 43. The sound came again, a little lower this time, closer to where my face would be if I'd been standing there. The rule echoed in my head. If you hear it touch the glass before you finish counting, do not open the front door for any reason. I wanted to stop. I wanted to get up, rip the curtains closed, turn every light off. Instead, I stayed on the couch with my eyes shut and kept forcing the numbers out. 50, 51. The scrape turned into a soft, patient tapping, moving along the window in a slow arc. It reached the center of the glass and stayed there. I could hear my own breathing between the taps now. By the time I reached 90, the tapping stopped. The silence felt heavier than the sound. I finished counting to 200 with my teeth clenched, every number quieter than the last. When I opened my eyes again, the lamp was still on, and the window was just a dark pane with my reflection in it. The front door stayed closed. I didn't go anywhere near it. In the morning, I told myself I was leaving, but the mountain and the cabin had already decided I was staying at least one more night. The world outside the window was white and buried. Snow had swallowed the steps, the driveway, and most of the hill. The narrow road down the slope was just a smooth, unbroken sheet. The plow wouldn't make it up there for a while. The reception on my phone dropped to 1 bar and stayed there. I walked up to the window in daylight and pressed my hand against the glass. No fingerprints, no smears, nothing to show anything had been there but me. Outside, the snow was clean. Inside, on the coffee table, the house rules sheet looked exactly the same. But when I picked it up, I saw a fresh crease across the bottom, like someone had folded and unfolded it all night. There was no extra line, no hidden message. Just that one rule, sitting there like it was waiting for another chance. I stayed close to the bedroom once it got dark. This time, I turned off every light before midnight and shut the bedroom door most of the way, leaving only a thin strip of glow from the stove clock. I didn't look at the window. I lay on the bed and watched the time crawl toward 1 a.m., listening for the lamp to click on by itself again. It never did. Sometime after 3, I must have drifted off, because the next thing I remember is gray light and the soft hiss of snow sliding off the roof. The road was plowed by late morning. By noon, I had my bag packed and the cabin key in my hand. When my signal finally came back on the drive down the mountain, my phone buzzed with a notification from the app. One new message from the host. "Thank you for following the window rule. Most guests only make it to around 90 before they look." There was a photo attached, a grainy shot taken from outside the cabin at night. Through the living room window, I could see myself standing there with the lights on, staring straight at the glass. And behind my reflection, just a half step off, something taller was standing in the same place I had been, its face turned toward the camera instead of the window.